Thank you for joining us in This Week in Turkey. I am Murat Tursan. We begin with somber news this week as Turkey is engulfed in flames. The initial forest fire that broke out in the southern district of Manavgat, Muğla, has grown into 71 fires countrywide and in 21 provinces. So far, 4 people are reported deceased and hundreds are being treated for injuries and smoke inhalation. 4,000 personnel are currently attempting to quell the fires nationwide as town after town is being evacuated.
Fires continue to rage across Turkey's southern provinces. The first fire broke out in the Manavgat district of Antalya province on July 28. Nearby neighborhoods were evacuated as the fire surged into the city center. According to an announcement by Turkey's Disaster Response Ministry, 4 people lost their lives in the fires and many more are undergoing treatment.
Geliyor, uçak geliyor, uçak.
Following Manavgat, further fires broke out nationwide. Residents in many provinces have been evacuated as a precautionary measure.
Evleri boşaldı. Evlere geldi.
A new outbreak was also seen today in Muğla province's Marmaris district, as response teams continue to battle blazes, but so far only 57 of the total 71 fires have been gotten under control. Efforts to put out the major fire are still ongoing. Five people were detained in the province of Osmaniye due to suspicions of connections with the fires. Officially, however, the causes of the fires remain unknown. Fires raged through city centers and surrounding rural areas, leading to devastation of crops and livestock.
In other news, the refugee crisis has been on Turkey's docket for some time. Recently, more than ever, Turkey is the world's largest home to refugees at almost 4 million. As of late, the main opposition party, CHP, has taken a more staunch anti-refugee stance, particularly with influx of Afghan refugees who cross through Iran to make their ways into Turkey. One mayor, Tanju Özcan of Bolu, is currently being litigated by the High Court after making statements vowing to charge non-Turkish nationals tenfold for utilities in an effort to get them to leave his city.
Bolu Mayor Tanju Özcan, one of the officials whose practices on refugees are most controversial, cut the aid given to asylum seekers in Bolu shortly after taking office. Last week, however, Özcan landed in hot water after a press briefing where he commented on foreign nationals living in Bolu. Cut off the aid, and they don't leave. Deny them a business license, and they still don't leave. So we have decided to take new measures. We will increase prices for utilities such as water and solid waste fees tenfold in some areas where foreign nationals reside. Foreign nationals will not be able to use up water at the same price as Turkish citizens. Following a meeting of the party's executive board, Republican People's Party CHP spokesperson Faik Öztürk criticized European leaders, saying, "You have destabilized the entire region for your imperialist ambition. You have turned it into a bloodbath, delegated the task of stopping the surging wave of migration to Turkey in return for a bribe of a few billion euros. Turkey is not, and will never, be Europe's migrant ghetto."
Sevgili halkım, ülkemizin gerçek
CHP chairman Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu shared on Twitter, "The real survival problem of our country is the flood of refugees. Now, we are caught in the Afghan flood. Brussels is preparing to propose a new bribe package to Turkey to keep the refugees from Afghanistan away from Europe." Despite the anti-refugee narrative, however, the mayor of Bolu has found no allies from his party after the investigation was launched. Seyit Toron, deputy chairman of the party, said in a written statement that Tanju Özcan's views on foreigners are his own, Inhibiting access to a fundamental right to life like water and even bringing it up as a topic of discussion is fundamentally opposed to our party's policies.
Joining me now, Doctor of International Relations, President of Refugee and Migrant Research Center in Turkey, and UN Refugee Agency Commissioner for Turkey, Dr. Metin Çorabatır. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure. Now, I want to start off by asking you, as you know, Afghan refugees have been in the news cycle more than ever, though they have been arriving in Turkey since 2014, according to statistics. Though there was a sharp decline in 2020, numbers have steadily grown. I want to ask you, is the situation as dire as we're all led to believe, or is this some type of media echo chamber effect?
Actually, what we learned from the news information that we can access so far, there is an increase in the numbers of people coming, crossing irregularly to Turkish border from Iranian side. But the size of this recent movement, is not for sure. I mean, I'm not sure at the moment whether it represents a kind of beginning of at least mass influx or seasonal or some gradual increase. The government claims that there are a big deal of exaggeration for the political reasons, but the pictures, videos, visual material, and the accounts of some eyewitnesses, reliable eyewitnesses, says there's definitely an increase in comparison with the past couple of years. But it's my understanding that this hasn't reached a huge kind of mass influx towards Turkey.
I see. Now, I believe we're all wondering how and why Iran is able to allow for refugees to pass through their borders so liberally, and why is Iran not playing a part in taking in refugees from Afghanistan? Also, what is the legality of this matter concerning Iran?
Concerning Iran, actually, another unclear issue is whether these people recently crossing the border from Iran to Turkey are departed originally from Afghanistan, or at least part of them are Afghan refugees from the Afghan refugee population who have been living for years, for decades in Iran. So we have been experiencing that there are millions of Afghan refugees since the Soviet occupation back to late 70s. Some of them were born in Iran, they were living, and for years until recently, these are also coming to Turkey. So maybe some of them are still, we don't know the profile of the recent movement. Maybe it is, most probably it is a mixed movement. Some originated from Afghanistan and some Afghans who have been living in Iran that we don't know yet clearly. But going back to your question, well, Iran is economically suffering nowadays, especially after these new sanctions by the US and Western countries. So economy in Iran is not good. So it would be their policy, part of their practical policy, to let these people or encourage or facilitate their movement to Turkey, or they are also unable to control. These are not clear issues. But as far as the legality concerns, of course, Iran is one of the first country of movement. I don't want to say asylum, because we don't know yet if this is a kind of refugee movement or irregular migratory movement. But Iran should try to do its best, her best, to keep these people, and definitely, especially the newcomers from Afghanistan, they should be stayed in Iran. So legally, it is Iranian responsibility. Iran is the state party to the 1951 Convention on the statute relating to the status of refugees. And on the other hand, to be fair, Iran and Pakistan, for decades since the beginning of the Soviet occupation, have been named as two countries hosting the biggest numbers of refugees. These refugees were definitely from Afghanistan. So the similar concerns, public concerns, economic problems created by the refugees are faced by both Iran and Pakistan as well. But definitely, legally, they should, Iran should do something at this to control this moment.
I see. And while we're on the subject of legalities, as we know, Turkey is on the European Union's payroll to keep the refugees at bay and serve as a buffer zone. Why is Europe so adamant about keeping refugees out? And also, is this a legal transaction between Turkey and the European Union?
Well, it is one of the biggest issue, current biggest issue faced by the contemporary refugee regime. The one element, the most important element, one of the most important elements of this regime is burden sharing. The preamble of the 51 Geneva Convention says this is the international problem, so the solution should be international. More recently, in 2019, the UN has completed a new agreement, which is called the Global Refugee Compact, and which emphasized against the burden sharing issue. This is the most important issue. What we are now witnessing is that each country, each leaders try to keep the problem out of their borders. And this has been an experience of the European Union since late 70s, actually. Walls have been established, the sanctions for transporters, the air companies to bring undocumented people. So European Union had been doing a lot of things to keep these people out. In literature, it is called, as you know, externalization of the asylum. So I don't want to use this terminology of gatekeeper or bribery or doing or providing protection of the refugees in exchange of dollars or euros. No, I mean, with or without these policies, it is Turkey's responsibility, right from not only the contemporary asylum law or refugee conventions, but it is a part of customary law that if someone tries to reach to your border and seek asylum because of the risk that his or her life is in danger, then the borders should be opened. Turkey abides by this, but also suffers the cost of this open policy. But the issue is that, of course, I don't agree the assistance, the amounts of money poured from EU side to Turkey, a total of 6 billion euro have been given to Turkey, and now European Union is considering to extend this statement and to give Turkey another maybe 3 or 4 billion to help the refugees in Turkey. Turkey should try to get more and more. It is not. It should not be considered as a bribery, as a thing in exchange of keeping these people. But Turkey is doing its something that derives from its responsibility against refugees. But of course, the European Union should be more generous to help, not only by giving money, but to increase the quotas for different types of resettlement to their territories as well. There are negotiations going on, but with or without this assistance, the problem, one big problem for the refugees and for the Turkish asylum system in Turkey is that Turkey keeps a geographical limitation to the 1951 Convention, which excludes non-European refugees, which is a big bulk of refugees in Turkey. I mean, we have very, very few number of European refugees. According to Director General on Migration Management, 28 European refugees are living in Turkey. The rest of millions are considered not refugees, but under the different status. This leaves a huge gap in Turkish system. Turkish system hasn't been prepared for integration as a durable solution in the country of origin. The rise of refugees derived from the status, refugee status, is not recognized. So I personally believe that if Turkey provides full refugee rights, some people says it is very risky, politically risky, of course, but which would help Turkey as well, because it will help the refugees to live under a known status. They are not status yet. It is not officially, they are not officially recognized people. Recognition is the most important part. They do not have guarantees for tomorrow. These statements that you mentioned in your presentation previously, you quoted the statement by Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu, saying that they would send them back to Syria if they come to power. We are working very closely with the refugees, and these type of statements create a fear. They said tomorrow they could be sent back to Assad regime, handed over to Assad regime. And in that respect, I think it's a serious violation of their human rights. You know, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is important in the sense that people should be free from fear. These kind of statements creates fear. But if Turkey would be applying fully the convention and give them a refugee status, which would guarantee them to stay until the conditions, the protection of their country of origin would be re-established, or they may get the Turkish citizenship or fully integrate. The integration part is a missing part. So most of the problems and misunderstandings, disinformation, hate speech, most of these issues are deriving from this huge gap, legal gap created by this geographical limitation is one of the big issues, I think. So with or without European assistance, definitely Turkey should or deserve more assistance, not only 6 billion, maybe 10 billion, but of course there are political realities in Europe as well, which is not favorable for these liberal approaches in many European countries, unfortunately. But this money Turkey deserves to be given, but with or without, or doesn't matter the amount, Turkey should deal with this problem with refugees within its own possibilities and okay.
I see, sir. Now, I'm glad that you actually touched on Mr. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu's statements. Now, the CHP chair, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, has vowed to send refugees home, as CHP appears to be very confident that they'll be in charge after the upcoming general elections. Now, in this hypothetical, is this actually legally doable? Can they actually send the refugees home, or would the United Nations be involved at that point?
Well, UN agencies, several UN agencies and reliable international human rights organizations are continuously monitoring the situation inside Syria and different parts of Syria. And their reports for years indicate that there is the conditions to voluntary repatriation of refugees from Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan and Iraq, from other countries, Syrian refugees back to Syria, is not conducive. So maybe one day if CHP, the opposition party, comes to power, and by chance, by that time, there is an integration, recognition that the conditions in Syria, inside Syria, become conducive, then, of course, any government, this government, if it happens during the this government's policy staying in the power, it would they could also send. But at the moment, under these conditions, the return situation is not conducive for internationally accepted norms. So if one aspect of Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu's statement is that two aspects he is raising here, as you know. One is he would bring peace in Syria. I mean, inshallah. But no one, it's a very complicated issue, a lot of big powers inside Syria, a lot of regional powers, everyone, it's a very complicated issue. One government in Turkey, it is not very realistic that one leader would solve or bring the peace in Syria. The second aspect is that he would negotiate with Assad, then with or without overall peace, reach an agreement, and Assad would accept these people, refugees from Turkey, to their own country of origin, which is also not realistic. These refugees are always saying that as long as Assad is in power in Syria and as long as his power structures, power centers continue, the regime is there, untouched, so they couldn't go back. So these are, as you said, mostly political statements. It is quite clear that in the last elections in Turkey in 2019, the CHP politicians, high-level politicians, openly were saying that yes, one issue which helped their election success was this rhetoric, this discourse of sending the refugees back to Syria, and it pays back because there are resentments inside the Turkish population. If you use it or continue to use this discourse, you can gain more votes. So, but if they actually comes to the power after the elections, I'm sure under these current situations, it is impossible for them to send.
I see. Metin Çorabatır, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Residents of İkizköy, a village in the southern province of Muğla, have been on a forest watch since April of this year to prevent a local Akbelen forest from being cut down to make way for a coal mine to feed the local thermal power plants operated by YK Energy. Residents argue that both local authorities and the energy company have been attempting to move forward with the logging operations despite an ongoing lawsuit filed by the locals. Medyascope's very own Doğu Eroğlu was on the ground.
The residents of İkizköy, a village in the province of Muğla, have been on guard for nearly 3 months to prevent the nearby Akbelen forest from turning into a lignite mine. A local energy giant, YK Energy, is planning on turning the Akbelen forest into a low-grade coal mine in order to provide coal to the thermal power plants it operates, while the residents of İkizköy are determined to protect their forest. The General Directorate of Forestry has already granted the go-ahead to turn the Akbelen forest into a mine, but the people of İkizköy have taken this decision to court and are trying to prevent the forest from being destroyed before a legal ruling is made. Despite the ongoing suit, however, it was rumored that the removal of trees would begin on July 15th. Medyascope contacted YK Energy and Muğla Regional Directorate of Forestry for comment, but neither party confirmed or denied the allegations. The residents of İkizköy, who have been keeping watch to protect the forest since April, protested when the Muğla Regional Directorate of Forestry sent a notification to the municipality on May 10th, stating that the logging operations would soon begin. The same notification also requested that locals would be barred from entering the forest. However, this did not deter the locals as they continued their watch. The locals stated that they will continue the watch until the legal process is concluded and continue to defend their legal and natural right to the Akbelen forest. Medyascope's Doğu Eroğlu was on the scene in Akbelen.
Dwellers of İkizköy, a forest village in Turkey's Aegean town Muğla, are to be evicted from their lands twice in the last 3 years to make room for an open-pit coal mine, unless the government breaks ranks with the coal industry. İkizköy residents have set up tents and started a forest watch campaign to protest the latest mine enlargement plans. The forest administration has already decided to hand over 700 acres of the Akbelen forest to the energy company. But İkizköy residents pressed charges against that decision and started a forest watch trying to halt the deforestation. Long story short, villagers are defending the forest from the forest administration and the energy companies.
In other news, the 2020 Tokyo Olympics made Turks swell with pride after the women's national volleyball team took 4th place. However, not everyone shared in on the celebrations, as one Turkish cleric and a well-known religious figure, İhsan Şenocak, came under fire for condemning the team. Şenocak is a well-known and a controversial figure in Turkey, who's known for holding very vocal and strict views on modesty and women. Last Sunday, a single tweet from Şenocak calling female athletes to observe the tenets of Islam drew condemnation and criticism online.
Müslüman, Allah'tan başka kimseden korkma.
Controversy erupted this week as Dr. İhsan Şenocak, a Turkish theologian, called the Turkish national women's volleyball team to follow Islamic tenets. Şenocak had previously been in the news cycle for his statement on women, gaining notoriety back in 2019 for criticizing women wearing blue jeans and attending university. Şenocak has a large following in Turkey, having over 800,000 followers on Instagram and over 900,000 followers on Twitter. This time, Şenocak came under fire for his controversial statements concerning the Turkish national women's volleyball team currently competing in the Tokyo Olympics. The national team is currently ranked 4th on the roster. Considered a historic achievement for the country, the national volleyball team has been celebrated far and wide in the country, nicknamed the Sultans of the Nets. Şenocak was quick to draw supporters and detractors for his tweet, calling the volleyball team to modesty and to abide by Islamic traditions. Daughters of Islam, you are the sultans of faith, chastity, love, modesty, and morals, not of courts. You are a mother's daughter who feels shame to even display her nose. Don't be fooled by television screens and your bearded brothers who are victims of popular culture, calling you sultans. You are our hopes and our prayers. Other famous theologians and religious figures from around the country came to Şenojak's aid, but others were quick to scold him. This user responded, "Eat your heart out. We are proud of the sultans of the net." This user commented, "Who are you to imply that female athletes are immoral? The constitution of this state still says that this is a secular country, not an Islamic republic." A cartoon by the famed Turkish political cartoonist Murat Sayın became an instant meme and was shared thousands of times. In response, Şenocak defended his statement on Twitter saying, "There's not insult in my statement. There is a call to daughters of Islam on what they should and should not do. I'll deal with moral bigots whose capital is blasphemy, one by one in court. I will speak according to Islam, not according to her taste." Regardless, the protests on social media rage on.
That's it for us in This Week in Turkey. I have been Murat Tursan, and thank you for joining us.
Türkiye'nin sivil, bağımsız, özgür ve çoğulcu bir medya ortamına ihtiyacı var. Medyaskop 20 Ağustos 2015'te bu ihtiyacı karşılamak üzere yola çıktı. Ama yolumuz uzun. Bu yolculukta bize Patreon veya YouTube'un katıl butonu üzerinden katkıda bulunabilirsiniz. Destek verin, sizinle güçlenelim.